So we've reached the final day of this course, and if I've succeeded at all, which I'm open to the very real possibility I did not, then you're not wondering where to go next from here. If you're wondering what happens now, then I have failed. And I think probably a lot of that failure has to do with much ado about nothing, talking too much, not having enough time to sit together and drink tea and meditate and all of that. That's why I told you a bowl for every word I say. But I hope that some of the energy, at least, or essence of these teachings is penetrated beyond the concepts and agreement and disagreement, and left you open and questioning and not wondering where we go from here. This practice is vertical. It's not horizontal. It's about being more, not doing more. If you're always trying to get somewhere, then you're never where you are. Even when you get to that place you were trying to get to, you won't be there either. So the not now, not here mind frustrates our ability to enjoy our achievements. Because the more we have a habit of not now, not here, not this, not for its own sake, the more that habit will be something we have to overcome when we do reach that place that we're trying to get to, when we say not here, not now, not this. Not here, not now, not this, but Saturday, at that event that I'm really excited for. But, if between now and tomorrow all I do is create and fuel this habit of not now, not here, even when I get to that event, that beautiful party, that habit will kick in. And in order to enjoy the party, I will have to overcome that habit energy. Not only this, but the not now, not here mind frustrates our ability to get where we're going. Remember the Indian story? The boy asked the monk, how do I become like you? And he said, 5 years. What if I work all day? 10 years. What if I become a monk and do nothing else? 15 years. Because one eye on the goal, one eye on what you're doing means you bungle a lot more. And then you get to, there's less intention in what you do. It's done with less care. It's done always for the sake of something else. This is why our society is built on this, and our products don't work. Satisfaction is impossible. In fact, the vacuous hole at the center of products is literally what moves the economy. Because if there was a product that actually satisfied human beings, everybody would buy that product and never buy other products because they'd be satisfied, and the whole economy would shut down. But because it's always the next thing, and things aren't built to last. In fact, they have intentional obsolescence designed into them, which is that change has grown dramatically even in the generation between my grandfather and me. I have a friend who works for a home appliance company. And he told me after a lecture one day, a trade secret, he said that actually in their company, their engineers will design the perfect washing machine. The washing machine that you could buy and that it would last your whole life. And then another set of engineers comes and starts replacing parts that will wear down over years. Intentional obsolescence. phasing out old products for new. When one of my great-grandfathers died, we found out from the age of 26 to 89, he had only 2 pairs of shoes, casual and formal. They lasted that long, his shoes. Why? Because they were made by a cobbler with intention and care. And when things are made by your neighbors, people you know, with care, you also take better care of them. Not only that, when the soles wore out and things, he could take them back to that cobbler and they could be fixed and repaired. But he also, because they're made with love, you're inspired to care for them with love. Respect them. Because they have origins, they have love, they have stories, which should be there in tea. The tea leaves that I drink, I know the farmer, I know the farm. This pot, I know who made it. Actually, this pot was made by a guy here in Miali that's a dear friend. And even this handle actually is a beautiful piece of wood I found in Hopi Land in Arizona. And the moment I picked it up, it fit absolutely. I've never felt a piece of wood fit in my hand perfectly. It had all the little contours just for my hand. So when things have origins, we respect them, and they also last longer, and they fulfill us more deeply. Whereas now we've been trained, we've grown up in a society of use it, toss it away, use it, toss it away, use it, toss it away, use it, toss it away. Things that are not made with respect. They're not designed with respect. They're designed with dollars and cents. They're not produced with respect. The people that are making them are at best apathetic to their job. They're not doing what they're doing with pride, mostly, for the most part. And then, we're trained to replace them all the time. And to fill. And that orientation of not here, not now, not this, is the antithesis of tea. Tea is kind of the antidote to that. It's the antidote because it is something we have to learn to do for its own sake. We have to learn to do things, this mind, that mind, the not here, not now mind is always asking, what's the purpose? What's the point? What's the function? What do I get out of this? How do I capitalize on it? What does it do for me? What's the purpose? What's the function? What's the progress? What do I get out of it? Right? How do I use it to get out of this here now? And that, it's always, how do I capitalize on it? Right? Which is a very modern approach to things we love. It's a very, in particular, an American approach, right? You love something, capitalize on it. Turn it into a business. Now, there's nothing wrong with business. Money's not dirty. There's nothing wrong with doing something you love for a living. That's good. It's a whole other issue. What I'm talking about is the habitual pattern of not doing things for their own sake. And that causes 2 problems. Number 1, right? Even when we get, because we're always doing something for something else, even when we get to that something else, in order to actually enjoy it, we're going to have to overcome the habit that we've created. If you're in a habitual flow of not doing things for their own sake because you're trying to get somewhere else, when you do get to that place, that habit of not doing things for their own sake is going to prevent you from doing that for its own sake. It might completely prevent you from being there and enjoying it, or at least it will be something that frustrates your ability to enjoy it. You'll have to overcome it. And second, we don't do things with heart and intention and properly when we're not doing them for their own sake. So, if you want to graduate from this course, in tea, graduation is failure. You want a tea master certificate? Right? This is common in a lot of traditions. I could pick on my own tradition. It's very common in Zen. I'm fortunate my teacher hated it. We have this, in Zen, there's this tradition of Inca, which is like transmission and validation kind of, and you even get a scroll. And my teacher made me swear, big part of the ceremony for him was that we never use this as a credential. There are no credentials. I am as unqualified as a teacher as I was the day I started teaching. How could I possibly, help others when I have so much stuff to do on my own? It's really, that's the feeling inside of me. It's hard to find a way to communicate something. But over time, what I've realized is that what I'm trying to communicate is being a student. I'm not trying to tell you guys what is. I'm offering questions. I'm offering studentship. I'm not offering, the answers. If you turn anything I say into dogma, you betray me and the teachings. In order to be a good teacher, I believe, you have to be a good student. Teacher, what does a teacher have to teach if they haven't spent time learning deeply? And not just learning theoretical, but actual practical stuff. And a lot of that practical stuff you can't really pass on. You have to find it. It's in the doing. It's in the practice, right? Not in any of the words. It's in the method. There's a famous story of a duke was sitting studying the classics, and one of his old servants who loved him was a wheelwright. In those days, all the wheels were made of wood, and this was the master wheelwright for the duke's household to make the wheels for all his carriage. And he saw the duke studying, and he said, "What are you studying, master?" And this is very abnormal for a servant like this to interrupt a duke when he's studying in those times. And I'm studying the classics. What's it to you? And the old man said, "Nah, you're not studying the classic. Classic in the word in Chinese literally means sutra. It's the same. The word Jing is sutra. It's thread. It's the divine thread or whatever." And so he's saying, like, you're not studying the words of the master, the essence of the master. That thread, the meaning of thread in sutra is like the essence. And you're not studying the essence, you're just studying the dregs that those masters left behind. Now the servant's in trouble. And so down goes the scroll, and he looks over and is like, explain yourself. And the wheelwright says, "Well, I can only explain myself in my own way. I'm a simple wheelwright. I'm uneducated. I can't even read. So I can only tell it to you in my own way." As I've made wheels over decades, I have found that there is the perfect point where if you hit the chisel too hard, it sticks to the wood. And if you hit it too soft, it doesn't peel away enough wood. And there's the perfect strike at the perfect angle to take away the perfect amount of wood. Not too soft, not too hard. And that perfect point of balance is not something I can teach my son. It cannot be passed on. Those masters that you're reading, they found that point of balance. So what you're reading is just the dregs they've left behind. Story ends there. Was the Duke enlightened, or did he have his old wheelwright killed for being rude? I like the former. Let's say he's enlightened. He realizes something, right? So this is a practice of learning to do things for its own sake, 1 to 10, 10 to 1. Advanced techniques are basic techniques mastered. It's about listening. It's about becoming more receptive. It's not about closing shop and graduating. It's about the beginner's mind. It's about becoming comfortable with the unknown. And it's about learning to do things for their own sake. You don't exercise in order to reach a place where you don't have to exercise anymore. If you exercise and get in really great shape, and then you're like, yep, now I'm in great shape, and you just quit exercising, you'll be amazed how quickly you lose that shape. The reward for exercise is not to reach some plateau where you don't have to exercise anymore. The reward for exercise is that you get to live a life as someone who exercises. You don't clean your house and then you're like, yep, now it's clean. and no more cleaning for me. The reward for cleaning a house is that you get to live in a clean house, and you get to live as a person who cleans. A person who cleans, that's a better life than a person who doesn't clean. A person who exercises, a human body that exercises is more healthy, and that's its reward. It's for its own sake. The same with tea. It's good for nothing, and not what it can do for you, or what's the point, what's the purpose. It's purposeless. It is for its own sake. It's an antidote to that mind of what do I do with it. You do it for its own sake. You do it for the sake of it. What I'm saying is that you have to learn to relax into practice. Ease into practice. Deflate ambition in practice. Having some ambitions in life is a whole other story, and there's good in that. But in terms of practice, our only ambition should be to make space for practice. So our effort is to make more space to practice. In other words, our effort is to practice more, not to get somewhere. And that runs contrary to our conditioning. And that's the point. So there is no certificate. The lesson of tea is grow. Grow, my child. And then you grow, and if you ask tea, like, so what now? She's like, grow, open, branch. Not close shop, open shop. Be more. That's the lesson. Unfortunately, a lot of people do graduate. I've spoken about this in this course a few times, and I know it can be confusing because on the one hand, if you want to learn how to serve tea, in this tradition we don't learn to make tea, we learn to serve tea. So if you want to learn to serve tea, you got to serve tea. Serve lots of tea. I want you to serve tea. To your friends, to your family, to your dog, to the Buddha when no one's around, to yourself. Serve lots of tea. That's how you learn. Listen to the tea and listen to the ceremony. Listen to the tea itself. Listen to your body. Listen to the ceremony. The ceremony is also speaking. The method's also speaking. What I was warning against is this capitalization, which is the worldly way. Okay, I took the Buddha course. I've got the certificate. I'm going to go tomorrow and build my website and start charging $2.99 for tea ceremonies every blah, blah, blah. And it's all about, how do I utilize it? And I know when something changes us, we're all enthusiastic to share it. But that's the point over the years as a teacher, especially a teacher of a space-first technique. I have grown very sensitive to the difference between ambition and enthusiasm. They actually have different frequencies. They're very similar. If you can't separate them in yourself, I would say that's a good sign that you need to receive more, listen more, not talk more. Because they have very different energies, enthusiasm and ambition. Enthusiasm is excitement to learn, to take in. Ambition is excitement to use what has been taken in. So enthusiasm opens doors to take in more. Ambition closes doors to take to utilize what has been taken in and apply it somewhere. And it's very easy. It's not necessarily that doing that should never happen or that it's a naughty thing, but it's more a warning is that is dangerous because it's very easy for ego to get in the way. For me personally, the number one qualification for being a spiritual teacher, for the kind of spiritual teacher I have sought in my life and that I try to be, is not what you think. Most people think that to be a spiritual teacher, you have to have attained something. I very much have not attained anything. So I fail in that department completely. And so for me, that's not what I'm trying to be or what I'm looking for. The two qualifications for me of a teacher of really anything, but especially a spiritual teacher, is, first of all, an understanding of the material. And that includes a theoretical understanding and a long-term association with the practice itself. And then the quality, though, that I'm really looking for is the ability to get out of the way. I want a teacher that gets out of the way of me getting the technique, the teaching, the wisdom, and I want a teacher that empowers me, not themselves. So gets out of the way. Out of the way of what? Out of the way of me getting the wisdom and the method and becoming it. And so that if you want to be a teacher, you at least in this lineage, you have to very much practice that getting out of the way. And if you try to capitalize on your tea practice, you're going to frustrate that, which means you're kind of you're moving into ambition. That's the difference. I hope that makes sense. Enthusiasm is excitement to receive more. That's at least how I'm defining it here. These are just words, but these energies have very different frequencies. Excitement to receive more. And that's very much a quality of listening, of a space-first practice, of doing something for its own sake, becoming more receptive, more humble, more reverent. And ambition is stopping reception and taking what you have and being excited to go use it towards something, which is, kind of how we're trained to treat everything in the world. And as I said, that frustrates us in those two ways of, getting it. So in Zen, it's about being comfortable with the unknown. That's part of being a student. If you're a student, then it's never really, it's not, getting away from that strong surety that closes your mind. There are things that you can take, as solid truths and stand on them, certainly. But even those, we don't have to constrict about them. And we don't have to stop listening to other points of view. Actually, sometimes we're put in a place where we have to decide, do you want to be right or do you want to be free? It's a tricky one. For example, there are humans who still think the world is flat. And if they try to explain to me why the world is flat, now I have two choices. There is obviously many empirical facts that I could use to dispute that view, including the angle of the sun, including photographs, just on and on and on. And maybe I could do that. And maybe I could even convince them and win. And there I am, triumphant, standing over my vanquished enemy. Let's say I choose to not do that. And instead I choose to just listen to them, hold space for them, without absorbing that incorrect view at all. what do I get from that? Well, I get a drop in the bucket of patience, of tolerance. I improve my listening skills a little bit, my empathy. I deflate my need to argue with others in the world or defend the truth, like I'm some kind of righteous defender. Truth doesn't need any defense. When they threatened to crucify Galileo for saying the earth goes around the sun in his book, whether this is a real story or not, it's powerful. They threatened that, and they said, change your book or we'll crucify you. And his answer, this might be a legend, it doesn't matter, it's powerful. His answer was, because I'm an intelligent person, I don't want to be crucified. You want me to change my book? I'll change my book. But I can't change the sun. Truth is truth. It doesn't need you defending it. Sometimes we have to defend things. This is that there are other situations where it becomes important to defend. But, let's say in this case, this person's harmless, that their view is harmless. They're not harming anyone by having that incorrect view, let's say. Yeah? So there's no need to defend, because there are places to defend. But ultimately, still, even in those cases, it's better if we don't do so with any self-righteousness or anger, but rather with love. The way the greatest social warriors have taught us, like Gandhi and Martin Luther King, that we can do that, we can defend with love when it's necessary, and not with anger, because if you hate, you become a hater. And so, but let's say it's a harmless view. Just for the sake of discussion, it's a harmless view. And so again, I can correct it and maybe convince that person and win, or I could just listen. Those are both viable. I'm not saying one's better than the other. I'm just saying there is actually some benefit in just listening, in the sense that I gain in tolerance and patience, and sometimes those qualities are more worthwhile than being right. Sometimes it's better to be free than be right. So sometimes it's important to just listen. And by listen, I don't just mean with our ears and to others and their views, but I mean just being comfortable with not knowing. Instead of trying to fill all of our not knowing with more knowledge. What if you just be comfortable with not knowing? In other words, instead of trying to figure out life like it's a puzzle, why not live it for its own sake? And why not be, instead of, I don't know, therefore I must find out. Why not, I don't know, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with not knowing. This was the magic of Socrates. He went to the Oracle of Delphi, this is the legend anyway, and I'm oversimplifying, and the Oracle said, you're the wisest person on earth, and he was like, no way, I'm a stonecutter. And then he was like, wow, all those people in line at the Oracle are getting tricked by a false Oracle. She said, I'm the wisest person, and she's wrong. I'm going to go find somebody wiser and take them there and debunk this Oracle so that everybody knows that it's a fake. And then started spending all his time on the road trying to find a wiser person. And he would come up to a judge and say, what is justice? A judge should know what justice is. And I don't know. He's a student. I have no idea what justice is. Can you explain it to me? And then the justice would say, well, blah, 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 blah. And he would say, well, that doesn't really make sense. And then they would say, blah, 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 blah. And he would say, well, no, that doesn't make sense either. And I'm not sure it's that. That's not a really great answer. I still don't know. And then at the end, the judge would just be like, get out of my way, and just shake off all that dialogue and go away. And the same for when he asked the priest, what is piety? And when he asked, and eventually what he realized that, maybe he was the wisest person in the world because he was the only one that was saying, I don't know. He was the only one that was just open and comfortable with not knowing, instead of trying to either ignore the issue and just go about your business without even thinking or questioning. As he said, the unexamined life is not worth living. Or being, frustrated. I don't know, therefore I must figure out. That energy I must fill. As opposed to just like, I don't know and I'm okay. I don't know and I'm okay. And stop, really trying to get somewhere. And that's what this practice is all about. The efforts then are in making space for a space where we can do nothing. Carving that out, I guess. Cleaning for its own sake. Emptying for its own space. Space first living is also about clearing, emptying. That's where more of the effort is, actually. This is about simplifying. The simpler your life is, the more things get down to little seeds, and the more you worry about what seeds you're planting and how to maintain and nourish and weed little sprouts, the easier your life will be when you're dealing with just a little simple garden. Careful about what types of seeds you plant. You want to live in an orange grove? Plant oranges. And tending the sprouts, because sprouts are easy to tend. Dealing with things when they're small. Simplify. Henry David Thoreau said it quite beautifully. A man's riches are measured in what he can go without. I'm also reminded of another Socrates quote that I like a lot. They say when he went to Athens for the first time and the giant sprawling market, Socrates exclaimed, "Who knew that in all the world there were so many things that I don't need?" The simpler life is, the happier you'll be, I promise. The more space in your life, in your home, the happier you'll be. So I would like to leave, though, with some advice, I guess, where you could go from here. Because we'll talk in a little bit about balance. It's not all just about emptying. There is practice to do. But mostly it's about making space for an ambitiousless practice, a goalless practice. Remember, Master Sawaki said, right, if your Zen's not good for nothing, it won't be good for anything. That's the paradox. In order for these practices to work for you, in order for them to have a function, in order for them to produce results, they have to be done for their own sake. Which means within them you can't have goals. Your goal is just to do it. And let that stuff take care of itself. And it will. So giving advice is hard, but I'll throw out some advice. Some of it may help you from here onwards in your life. Sometimes, remember, when you're simplifying also, we're always looking for grand meaning. We're trying to figure big things out. Big things are made of many little small things. And when you get the small things right, the big things take care of themselves. And we often take the small things for granted, when it's actually, that's what he's teaching us about the ordinary. And so I think the more you get the basics in line, the more the big stuff in your life will take care of itself. My teacher always said it's like we're carrying a wheelbarrow of stones. And when you get the basics down in life, all the little pebbles on top fall off. And what's left is the big boulders that you have to spend the rest of your life chiseling away and working at. As a spiritual teacher, actually, it's really hard for me to help anyone until they have the basics down, because I don't know if the problem that you're presenting, if the question that you're asking it comes from your deep spiritual arc in this life, or if it just comes from a lack of having the basics down. So much falls away when you get the little things in order that you kind of have to do that first so that we could then address what really is important in your journey. Until then, the answer is get the basics down. And the basics, we can look at the more outward basics and the more inward basics. There's 5 of each. The outward basics, don't take for granted the simple things, right? Are you eating right? Are you sleeping properly? Are you exercising? Are you meditating every day, morning and evening? Meditation is spiritual practice. And as I said, in 2020, I believe that it is essential for sanity. And are you connecting to your Tao, your purpose, your passion, whatever that is, painting? For me, it's tea. Are you connecting to that every day? The thing that you do for its own sake. The thing that you would do if there was no possibility of money. The thing that speaks to your being, not to your doing. Whatever that is. Canoeing, photography, tea, art, whatever it is, that thing you do for its own sake. Are you touching that every day? These are the basics. If these aren't there, then most likely even your biorhythms are out of whack. Most people's biorhythms are out of whack. Usually in some kind of cycle of extreme activity followed by exhaustion, followed by extreme activity, followed by exhaustion. And chaos of doing. So do you have these basics down, these simple things? Are you eating right for your body? Healthy food. Are you eating well? Are you sleeping well? Enough. Are you exercising? Are you meditating every day? And are you touching that which fulfills you, that which you do for its own sake? Which means your biorhythms will then be in alignment, in harmony with nature more if you're doing those things. Doesn't mean you won't have days where they're not. Doesn't mean it's perfect, but you'll be much more in balance with your body and with nature. And a lot of problems will fall away just by doing those things well for the long term. And even those things you could treat as big things. Eating right, what's that mean? It's so big, right? You can also reduce that to small. How do I make a nutritious and delicious lunch today? Today. That's a very successful day. If I can make a healthy, nutritious, and delicious lunch, that's a pretty good day. Wonderful to have that. So these things can become very small. When and how am I going to exercise today? Not big like exercise every day for a year. Right? Little. Start small. Get the little things down. The big things take care of themselves. A lot of stones fall away when you have even these 5 basics. Then the 5 inner basics, we've covered all of them in this course. Right? We covered all of them. The first 2, listening and honoring. Can you listen? And listening is a metaphor. I don't know how else to say it. Can you receive? Can you identify? Are you caught completely in wave business? Or are you able to see that the wave is made of the ocean? Can you touch that you are water as well? Listen and honoring. Can you honor? Can you honor yourself? Can you honor that which is holy in nature? That which is sacred in you and in others? Can you honor? If you got those 2 down, you're 95% there. The next 2, we talked about a lot, mountains and rivers. Patience and persistence. Patience, kindness, slow down. There's 2 turtles here walking down the golden road. I told you, don't ever explain the theme of your tashi to your guests, but there's 2 turtles walking down the golden road. Be the turtle. The turtle lives long because it moves slow. Patience. Persistence though, determination. If you're really patient, then you will be determined, because every time you start again, you will start again fresh. Doesn't matter how many times you fall down. It matters how many times you get up. 999 times falling down is 1,000 opportunities to get back up. That's patience and determination. Right? So if you're viewing it as falling down, focus instead on the getting up, or both. Learn from the falling down so you don't fall down in that way in the future. But also be inspired to get back up every time for the first time. Patience and persistence. And then finally, service. All that we gather is to share. Shamans, priests, healers, all monks, whatever, all spiritual practitioners. In every hero myth, beautiful book, right? Hero with 1,000 Faces. Joseph Campbell. In every hero myth across the world, doesn't matter what tradition, the hero goes on the journey to bring back a boon for his people. He doesn't go to figure himself out. I need to find out more about me, and the gathering for you is pointless. You want the $1 million secret? You owe me $1 million. I'm going to give you the $1 million secret. I'm going to give you the secret to living forever. Ooh, eternal life. I think there could not be a better, more valuable secret. Certainly worth $1 million. You owe me $1 million. The secret to living forever is give it away. And then it lives on. All that you experience, all that you learn, all that you utilize that to create things that you can give away. Use your gifts to give, to share, and you live forever. In fact, the $1 million that you owe me, I'm going to use that to go build a tea center for others. So service is the aim, it's the purpose, it's the function. It's the one exception to no ambitions. The one ambition that is always permitted is for the good of all beings. For the good of all beings. Yes, I'm driven for the good of all beings. Yes, pour as much of your ambition into the save the earth jar as you want. These are the basics. If we can get these down, a lot of issues will go away for us. And if we can simplify. My other little bit of practical advice is to the best practical advice I can give you is this. The world it can be a hard place, and certainly a hard place to maintain a practice of peace and quiet, and of doing things for their own sake, and of resting in I don't know mind, and being open and connected to nature. And all these things can be really challenging in the world that's kind of driven in another direction, at least in some ways. And it can be hard to go out and go to your work and pick up your kids and all the things that we have to do on every day. One very important thing is to not, there's two things that I can advise about that, I guess, that are very practical, and one's more of an orientation, and one's like very down-to-earth thing you can do. The orientation is this. Stop. This is probably the most valuable advice that I could give you in terms of shifting your perspective when it comes to practice. Stop pitting your life against your practice. Stop fighting, right? That orientation is essential, and it yields all kinds of results. For example, instead of viewing household chores as something that's getting in the way of your ability to practice, turn them into a practice. Meditate while you wash the dishes. Someone spoke about this in the forum. So that orientation can help in that way. Can shift your perspective on practice, so that you start seeing the everyday mind is Zen, and you can work with the everyday things. But stop making your practice the enemy of your other areas of your life. They are one. They're not, they're friends. Make a treaty. Bring them together. That's the orientation that is extremely helpful. And they can come together in all kinds of ways. But really making a strong effort. That's a good place to put some effort. That I shall stop orienting towards my life as like the enemy to my practice. That my job gets in the way of my ability to be peaceful, or whatever in life you're pitting against your practice. The more practical thing I can say is this. I'm always amazed, as I said, the world's a hard place to practice. It can be challenging. Those challenges, if you start shifting that orientation, you start to see those challenges as growth. Oh, this is an opportunity for me to test my spiritual practice, as opposed to, oh, the world's so hard and it breaks me and ruins my ability to practice. And it's the fault of the world, right? The man of the Tao internalizes everything, externalizes nothing. So there's not, when she's out in the world, she's not saying like, I'm at the whims of the world. Internalize it all. That's this orientation. This is my practice. There's no better affirmation than that. This is my practice. What's my practice? This is my practice. When I'm on the subway, this is my practice. People bumping me, this is my practice. This is my practice, this is my practice. If you say that mantra all day long, you've got it made. So shift that orientation to life is not the enemy of my practice, it is my practice. The more you practice doing things for their own sake, the more you'll be able to do that also. The more you have quiet space where you drink tea for its own sake, meditate for its own sake, the more you'll be able to ride the subway for its own sake, wash the dishes for its own sake, and and this will be my practice. This is my practice. This is my practice. You don't become more spiritual by doing some particular activity more yoga, more meditation. You become more spiritual by taking the mind that you cultivate in meditation and applying it to all activities. By walking meditatively, by doing dishes, etc. This is my practice. So shift that orientation. And in support of that, right, make your home a sanctuary. Again, I'm always amazed that people, say it's challenging and difficult to practice in the world. I see that. Part of the problem with that statement is your orientation. Instead of orienting towards, oh, it's so hard to practice in the world, you can orient towards, yes, challenges. Challenges will make me stronger. This is my practice. But also part of the problem, I think, is that, if I go out into a challenging world all day, then I should come home to a space that encourages my practice. This is so helpful. Dogen Zenji said, when you enter the space, practice begins. People have testified to that with regards to our center a lot. The moment I came in the door, I started practicing. Make your home a sanctuary. Make it a place that is easy to practice in. So that when you get home, you don't also have to overcome your own home in order to practice. But rather, you can lean on it. And there's all kinds of practical ways of doing this. Having a dedicated tea space or meditation space, if possible. We all have limitations in different homes, etc. If possible. That can be a reminder. It can also just be, get charged with the energy of tea and meditation and easy to fall into. We walk by it, you're like, right? Artwork of sacred images and altars. Altars can be, of course, they have all kinds of dimensions, but one function of things like that is as a reminder. A Buddha is a reminder of who I am inside. A Guan Yin is a reminder that I am compassionate. That's in part what that does. There's all kinds of ways that we can do this. Surround yourself with the teachings of the wise. In some places in China and Japan, monks even meditate with sutras on their head. They're juju and having that stuff around, or whatever it is, whatever texts or commentaries are sacred to you, read them. Surround yourself with them. Surround yourself with things that make practice easy, just like it is in a retreat center. Doesn't mean you have to turn your home into a retreat center. Obviously, there needs to be spaces for living and doing other things too. But the more that you take some efforts to make your space a sanctuary, a solace, the easier it will be to come home and just fall back into practice. It will catch you like a net. And the more you do that, and the more you live in a way that, like, you're doing things for their own sake, and when you come home, at least you do that, the more you'll be able to continue that outside. And that first part of this equation, which is the more important part, the orientation will start to shift. Okay? So make your home a sanctuary. Some final bits of spiritual advice. I have 8 here we could go through really quickly that I think are just in general really good signs for life. The first one is to look for charges. Look for places where you're charged. Anything that charges you emotionally is a button. If you get charged, red flag. When you've transcended an issue, you don't care anymore. The condition of the road doesn't matter if you got a flying car. If you're upset, you have issues. Learn to see those red flags. Those are chi leakages. Learn to plug those. Learn to release the tension and deal with whatever that blind spot is. But if it charges you, it for sure is an issue. Because what charges you might make someone else laugh. Or they just completely don't care. In other words, if you spot it, you got it. Yeah? If you're charged by it, there's an issue. So learn to look for charges. Number 2, we've talked about so much. Surrender the impulse to do. Learn to do nothing. All great things come out of doing nothing. That's the paradox. Would you say that I'm an unproductive person if I go sit in a cabin in the woods and do nothing for 6 months, but then as a result, write a very important book that changes the lives of many people? Or paint a painting that winds up in a museum and changes the lives of thousands of people? And all great ideas come out of the pregnant nothingness, the formless. We've all had that experience of not being able to remember something. And the moment we relax and deflate our ambition to get the answer, it pops. Boop. Oh, I know where my keys are. Learning to do nothing makes you more productive, not less. So learn to surrender the impulse to do. Intentionally surrender the impulse to do. Not laying on a sofa watching TV. But intentionally surrender the impulse to do. Doing things for their own sake. Number 3, become familiar with the cosmos. Develop childlike wonder. Learn about this place. Explore. Learn. Constantly learning until you die. Studentship. Just wonder and wow. 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 The more wows in your life, the better you are. Losing that curiosity that you had when you were a child was not a good thing. I think if you ask yourself, you'll agree. To the extent that you've lost that is the extent you need to go to get that back, that wonder. Explore things wondrously. Number 4, we talked a lot about balance. Balance between mountains and rivers, between being and doing, between, discipline and relaxation, form and flow. Not all nonchalant and not caring and all nonchalant and loose, which means tasteless. Do you like this tea? Yeah, I like it. What do you like about it? I like it in my mouth. Not any sensitivity, just put it in a mug, put it in a, whatever. That's the tea example, the kind of whatever attitude, not that nonchalantness, and not oppressive, tight, stuck in the form. And balance is not a one-time thing. You don't balance and then you're done. You watch a tightrope walker, they have to take a few steps, stop, adjust. Take a few steps, stop, adjust. We're like that too, and you have to know your tendencies, know yourself. If you haven't guessed by now, for example, I lean towards the oppressive side. I can be militant. I'm more warrior spirit than loose and free. So, it means I got to lean more into openness and to find my balance. So find that balance. Number 5, Stop resisting transformation. Stop resisting growth. Quit it. We can't make all the transformations right now all the way to Buddhahood. We can't go pass through all the Dharma gates. But what we can do right now, you and I, what you can do right now today, what you can do right now, starting today, is become willing to change. You can generate a willingness to grow and change. In fact, something I write in my journal all the time is how many times in my life I have proven that I could change so much 5 years from now that I won't even recognize myself anymore. I don't recognize my teenage self. I don't know if that dude and I could even have a conversation. I don't even know what to say to that dude. Right? So I'm open to the possibility that I will change so much I won't even recognize myself. Stop fighting change. At least. If you can't foster it, at least you can just be willing. Right? Just a willingness to transform you can do. Number 6, find fulfillment in the effort. This is, we've talked about today, doing things for their own sake. Suzuki said, right, is it better to succeed or find fulfillment in the effort? If you understand this, you've figured out one of the greatest treasures in life. The journey is the goal. Find fulfillment in the doing, not in the getting somewhere or getting something. Yeah? Number 7, learn to turn inward, especially at moments of crisis. Internalize everything, externalize nothing. Learn to turn inward. We are taught to seek validation from the world, from getting things, or from the way others see us, on how many likes we have on social media or other nonsense. We're constantly trying to seek validation through accumulating things or positions, that whole king of the heap game, or how others see us, to seek validation from the outside. Learn to turn inward, right? 1,000 times 1,000 times 1,000, I have come to you throughout your entire life. I have come to you and I've said to you over and over again, my son, my daughter, that which you seek is inside of you. And when I say I don't mean Buddha, and I don't mean something foo-foo. When I say I mean the I at the start of all your sentences. I mean your I has been telling you that your entire life. Your innermost being has been whispering that truth to you. Why is it difficult to hear? Because it's subtle and quiet and there's a lot of noise. Finally, number 8, be a person of faith. Be a person of faith. Now, if you want to include, when I say be a person of faith, I'm talking about something very specific. If you want to include faith in something religious, that's fine. You can include that in that, but that's not what I'm talking about here. That doesn't mean that's not a good thing, to have faith in Buddha or Krishna or Jesus. If that's a part of your life, wonderful. But that's not what I'm talking about here when I say be a person of faith. If you want to include that in this reminder, that's fine. But that's not the type of faith I'm talking about. I'm talking about having faith in yourself, having faith in others, having faith in goodness. I'm talking about being a person who sows concord, not discord. I'm talking about someone who spreads joy, not hate. Someone who spreads faith, not doubt. Positivity, not negativity. Someone who believes in the goodness of themselves and believes in the goodness of others. And believes in the holy in nature. And be a person of faith. Spread light. Spread positivity. Spread connection and concord, not discord. And if you want to read something that captures the essence of this perfectly, read the prayer of St. Francis. One of the most beautiful, beautiful utterings ever said in this world. Go find it online, read it. Captures that very beautifully. So these are some advice. Again, all that I've said in this whole course is just questions. not answers. Don't turn anything into dogma. They're all invitations to explore. This is a smorgasbord, it's a buffet. Take what fills you, leave the rest. The content, if you're focused on the content of this course, then, and you're saying like, what's next now that I've done? Then, in some ways I've failed, because there is no next. There is no answer. It maybe not about figuring something out. It's about being okay with not knowing. That which I don't know will always be infinitely more vast than that which I do. And I'm sitting right here not knowing a billion, trillion, gazillion things. And I'm okay with it. Practice that kind of mind. And explore with wonder. Explore tea and mostly listen. Drink lots of tea, listen to the tea, at least a bowl for every word. That's your homework. And listen to the ceremony. Practice these methods. Make them become second nature to you, so that you can do them fluently, without ruffles, right? You can do it perfectly without ruffles, without, well, what do I do next? Oh yeah, spin the bowl. You have to practice a lot to get to the place where you're free, where the method can happen on its own perfectly. Of course, never perfect. There's always little mistakes, but you know what I mean. It can just flow. It takes training. And listen to that ceremony. Listen to that method, because there's a lot of wisdom in it. As we talked about the ceremony, there's a lot of stuff coming through the method into you. Whether you're conscious of it or not, it's coming in. I know that from personal experience, and I invite you to explore that. Listening to the method, listening to the tea, listening to your body, listening to nature. This is really the practice. Listen to the method, listen to the tea, listen to your body, listen to nature. Deep breath. Time for us to come down to the earth. Our last earth lesson, practical lesson. And our last practical lesson is about how to be a guest. We've talked a lot about, we talked about how to hold the bowl, which facilitates listening. We talked about 2 ceremonial methods that are really one. Remember, the side handle is just an extension of leaves in a bowl. And we've talked about practicing chashi. We've talked about water, teaware. So we kind of understand really a ceremony. And of course, there's more. There's lessons on fire, for example. There's lessons on all kinds of little things. It's a lifetime. And there'll always be more to explore. So these are just invitations and beginnings. But now we can talk about how to be a guest at a tea ceremony, which is something that a Chajin, a tea person, should know. However, before we can talk about how to be a guest at a tea ceremony, there's a very, 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 very important caveat. Also important caveat. So important. It needs to be underlined, highlighted, starred, circled. And we need to take a little sticker and put it on the notebook there too. That's how important it is. Which is that knowing how to be a guest at a tea ceremony is not the criteria that you can use as a host to judge your guests. In other words, because you know how to be a guest, does not, even in here, if you do this, you've lost the Tao of Tea. You're off path. If you, even in here, you're looking at your guests and being like, oh, no, he doesn't know how to be a guest, right? No. Just like, the other way too. We'll talk about that in a minute. So you cannot judge your guests. People asked even in the forums, like, should I tell my guests how to hold the bowl? No. The sum total of what I tell people to introduce tea when I prepare tea for them is literally, we're going to drink some tea in silence. Sometimes it helps to add a time frame so people are more comfortable. So they know we're going to drink tea in silence for 3 bowls, for example. Then they know, oh, okay, that's how long I got to sit here. That can be helpful. Sometimes I include that, sometimes not. But my instructions are, we're going to share some tea together in silence, maybe for X amount of time. Use the bathroom if you want to. Be yourself, be comfortable. There's nothing to do, there's no etiquette for you. And drink as much or as little tea as you would like. If you don't want any more tea, put your hand over your bowl when it comes time to drag the bowls back in, and we'll leave you out for 1 round or 2 or for the rest of the session if you like. That's it. That's the totality of my instructions. There's nothing else. And there's no, because you understand how to be a guest does not mean you get to judge your guests. Remember the principle of taka no ju. Those who speak ill of other people's tea do not understand tea. It's not a good move. Right? Maybe I'll give you some examples. Now, that's the beginning of how to be a guest. At the start of this course, I told you how to make tea. You want to learn how to make tea? Learn how to bow. If you can bow, you can make tea. If you can make tea with the heart that is used to bow, which is a heart of receptivity, humility, and reverence, listening and honoring. If you can make tea with that heart, it will be great tea. If you can, now we get to day 3 and day 4 of our course. If you can take that heart and empower it with method, whew, now you're off to the races. Right? As I said, it's one thing to just set somebody free. Like, yeah, I just want to do it my own way. Just set somebody free. It's another thing to set somebody who is trained free. That's the key of all, music and athletics and art, and even great artists. Somebody in the forums mentioned Picasso. We think of him as innovator, rule breaker, but actually look at his early artwork. He's highly trained. So anyway, when you bring those two together is where it really is at, right? But how to make tea? The energy, the spirit is if you can bow, you can make tea. The foundation. Same with Zen. If you can bow, your Zen journey's good. You're on your way. If you can bow, you can get there. Yeah. So same with being a guest. Same thing. Bow. Show up with reverence. The aim of tea is guest and host are one. That's a very deep and powerful statement because it also is metaphorical because it means subject and object. In Buddhism, guest and host were used as metaphors of subject and object, self and other. One ceremony, not, that connection, that spirit. And so as a guest, you're showing up with reverence, which means also same thing, you're not judging your host. You're not showing up and being like, oh, look at that kettle and the way da-da-da, or oh, this tea's not organic. At some other date, if there's an opportunity, if your grandma serves me an inorganic tea in a bag in a mug and she says, honey, have some tea with her heart. Oh, if I miss that, her hospitality, her kindness, her open-heartedness, if I miss that opportunity to connect to her and to the occasion, I have failed as a tea person. Maybe if there's an opportunity on a later date, I can explain, and she's open to it, and it comes up naturally, I can explain to her the importance of sustainability in tea. but as a guest, we receive. And so you be humble. As a host, you can think of like, how would I treat, as a host, you can think of like, how would I treat it if a VIP was coming over for tea? Somebody I admire a lot, the Dalai Lama. And as a guest, you can think, as though you've been invited to the Dalai Lama's house, or a movie star, or rock star, whoever you admire. And walk with that kind of respect for the occasion and for the guest or the host, and without judgment. We'll come back to that without judgment again later. So, honor the host, honor the occasion is basically where it starts in being a guest. Second, we are early. Being late to a tea ceremony is highly interruptive. And yet, not too early, because that's like showing up for the performance when the stage isn't prepared. If you show up too early and the person is still making their chashi, that's very awkward for them. It's very awkward for the host. And if, basically as tea people, we know what it's like to be the host, so we want to be really good guests. And so showing up early while they're preparing, we're in the way, and we're seeing the stage before it's ready, which is, in both ways, it's not helpful. So, whatever, 5 minutes early, 8 minutes, you're always early, but not too early is another one. Dress is really important. Clothing is important. And, it's not a list of do's and don'ts. But what it really is about is, oftentimes when we dress, and there's nothing wrong with this, we're trying to beautify ourselves. That's great. That's a wonderful thing. It brings us confidence, makes us feel good about ourselves. We all have a way of dressing. I guess my way of dressing is wear the same clothes all the time. But, I understand that anyway. Of course I do. But that's not the energy when you go to your closet and you're going to go to a tea ceremony. Your energy should not be, how do I stand out, but how do I not draw attention to myself as a tea person, because the focus of the ceremony is the tea. So you don't want to attract attention. You want to avoid attention. So you want to, whatever that means in terms of your wardrobe, it means not drawing attention to yourself. But this is a good place where, again, I can use it as an example, like as a host, when someone dresses in a flashy way, you don't get to judge them. The moment you have that thought, you're off the path. When my teacher wanted to scold us, he always used to say, "You've forgotten the face of the Buddha." So if you judge one of your guests because they're dressed flashy, you've forgotten the face of the Buddha. You've forgotten the Tao. You're out of the alignment with tea, the spirit of tea. So, an example of that, one time I was in Russia, and we were serving tea to this large group in the evening. It was, 70 people in this place. And 5 minutes before the ceremony, in walks this woman. And she's dressed to kill. I'm talking like she's going to the Oscars. She's going to like a formal ball at Putin's house. It's like she's like, full on like, wedding level attire. And, we sit down, we have tea. And afterwards, it became a great lesson for a few of my students who were helping. Because afterwards, they were like, that girl was distracting. You see her? That was distracting. And kind of like a little judgmental. And I scolded them. I said, no. You don't understand. You're not looking at this from the right angle. That woman obviously did not dress that way to come to our tea ceremony. She obviously had another event tonight, either before or after our tea ceremony. And she didn't have time to even change. And that on a night with such a important event in her life that she had to dress like that, she still made time to come to our tea ceremony. Is an incredible honor and makes me feel full of gratitude. The other possibility is that she loved the idea of tea ceremony so much that she dressed up in her best clothes to come, which is also very flattering and honoring. But in either case, her gesture is epic, and is met in me with nothing but welcome and love. Right? So that's a good example of how you can't use the etiquette that you understand when you're a tea person as a host to judge. Just like if you're a skilled brewer, you can't use that to judge your host. We'll come back to that one in a minute. So, but us tea people, we want to dress in a way that does not pull attention to ourselves. We want to dress in a way that we, know the attention's on the tea, not us. And a big part of how tea communicates, people are often, focused on, when they first start listening to tea, they're focused on the foo-foo, the visions and the thoughts and the woo and how I feel, and all that's wonderful. But a huge part of tea's communication is chemical. It's to do with flavor and aroma, and mouth and tasting the tea is a part of what I mean when I say listen to the tea. It is connecting to your senses. It's nonverbal communication. So, and actually more of what we taste in tea is aroma. Tea is mostly water. It doesn't really have flavor, but a flavor and aroma are really bound up in us and as humans. And all animals really. Snakes taste with their scent completely, for example. So they taste the air. So they stick their tongue out. So a lot of what we experience in tea is aromatics. And for that reason, as a guest, we Chajin never show up to tea ceremony with essential oils or cologne or perfume on. In fact, it's not a good idea to show up with freshly washed hair that you just shampooed. Because a lot of people are going to meet tea and communicate with tea sometimes for the first time through the aroma of the tea. And if they're sitting next to somebody loaded with perfume or essential oils or whatever, then that's, getting in the frequency. Again, this is not, I keep saying this just because it's so important, underlined and stickered and highlighted. That doesn't mean as a host I get to be like, oh, Connor sure has a lot of cologne on today. Right? No, then I've forgotten the face of the Buddha. In that case, I just, what a lovely cologne. That's what you do in that situation. Number 5, when you show up, appreciate the chashi. Invest as much energy as you can in reading the chashi. The person who made the tea took time to make a chashi, took time to clean and decorate to celebrate the occasion. And they, remember, hopefully the chashi is like open-ended and it can be read in all kinds of ways. Today's turtle medicine on the Golden Road. Or much more, I don't know, right? But as a guest, read into it. Wow, look at the flowers. Look at the teaware. Admire the incense urn, the kettle, the pots. Look at things. Admire them. Read into them. What does this mean to me? The more you appreciate, it's just like, the more you appreciate the food that someone cooks for you, the more you're rewarding all the effort they put into it. Take the time to appreciate the chashi as much as possible, as throughout the session, at least before the session starts. During it, you can also appreciate the tea. But remember, the performance is part of the chashi. It's not just the decorations. The chashi is the building, the theater. The chashi is the decorations for that particular performance, and the chashi is the performance itself. So take the time to appreciate the building, the decorations for this particular occasion, the teaware, etc., and then the tea as it happens. If there's music, incense, whatever there is that the host provides, whatever the performance is, you take the time to fully appreciate it. Fully appreciate it. Also, another thing about being a good guest is to stay with the tempo of the ceremony. Stay with the tempo of the ceremony. Don't be that person that everybody's waiting for to put their bowl back. The bowls come and go at a rate, and the guest, and there's a natural rhythm to that. It shouldn't be rushed, nor should it be forcibly slowed down. It should happen at its own pace. In bowl tea, Gong Fu tea is different. Gong Fu tea does have a little bit of a forced pace, and there's a reason for that. But this isn't a Gong Fu course. Maybe we'll have another online Gong Fu course. But in bowl tea, let the rhythm be what it is. No need to force it to speed up. No need to force it to slow down. Don't try to make it slow. Don't try to speed it up. And as a guest, just follow the rhythm. Don't be the one that everybody's waiting on. And don't be the one that like drinks fast and sticks the bowl out. Try to go with the rhythm of the other guests. In fact, I told you oftentimes guests, we have to, I would, in an ideal world, when I'm drinking tea with a bunch of tea people, I don't gesture drink. But oftentimes when you're serving tea to people who aren't tea people, you have to, after you hand out the bowls, you have to gesture because they don't know that it's time to drink. But as a tea person, as a guest, you know that after the bowls are all out, after all the bowls are out, right? You never grab a bowl until they're all out. So I don't hand this one and then the host is handing these and you're already grabbing. But once the bowls are already out, you can grab. And that will, then other people will see that. Oh yeah, and they grab, right? So you stay though with the tempo of the group, and you can help the host guide the tempo even. And that includes also if you get up to go to the bathroom, for example. If you leave the tea space and come back, you're bringing in outside energy into the ceremony. You have to be careful how to get back in the rhythm. If you're a musician and you come into a room where musicians are playing, you don't just start making noise. You have to listen and find the right place to get in the jam. Right? So when you get up and come back down, you see how it would be, it's very interruptive if, let's say, all the bowls are out right here. Okay? All the bowls are right here. I drew them back in, and here's Connor's, right? And he's gone to the bathroom. Yeah? He's gone to the bathroom, and I'm right now just filling the kettle to decant this steeping, right? And Connor's bowl is there full of tea because it's still the previous round because he was using the restroom. And if I'm in the stage of actually pouring and he is like, oh no, and really quickly like drinks his tea and then rams his bowl at me, now it's highly interruptive for the one that's brewing. What he can do in that case is just sit and wait. Let me steep this tea. Let me hand out these other bowls, and now he's back in perfect rhythm. So this could mean you need to speed up. It could mean you need to slow down, but it means basically you wait and you get back. When you leave and you come back, you join the tempo properly. You get into the tempo in the right way. The coming and the going of the bowls, right? You follow the tempo, right? Number 7, we've already talked about. You never criticize someone's tea. Not even inside. You've forgotten the face of the Buddha. Never. It means you don't understand tea. It's not the spirit of tea. You're missing connection. Somebody's saying, here's my hospitality, here's my heart. And you're saying, not good enough for me. You don't have the right kettle. You don't have the right tea. You're not pouring properly. You're snootiness. This tea's not to my taste. We don't do that as Chajin. We don't criticize. In fact, the opposite. When I come as a guest for tea, I am actively seeking compliments, honest compliments. I'm looking for things to compliment, maybe out loud, that's possible. It's a good idea to, the ceremony might be silent. So before the ceremony or after or both, it is very good to give a compliment. Before, you could compliment the teapot or the chashi. After, you could compliment the tea or something. But here's the rule. Here's the important etiquette. The important thing is that which you compliment, it has to be genuine. It has to be genuine. It's not like, like the new haircut, Janos. Like that, not that kind of compliment. It's like, it has to be genuine, something that you actually appreciate. Now, what does that do for you? That means listening. That means you're going to make a habit as a guest of actively looking for things that you honestly enjoy. Do you see the power in that? That's gratitude. If you can do all tea lessons or life lessons, if you can every day make a conscious effort to look for the things that are abundant and beautiful and miraculous in your life, you'll be a lot happier. And they are there. All the conditions for your happiness are there right now. Even, for example, even your most mopey morning. If you gave that mopey morning to a blind person or a deaf person, they would be incredibly ecstatic. Sound. It would be a celebration. All of the things, there are an infinite amount of things that could happen tomorrow that would make you wish for today, wish for yesterday. So the conditions for your happiness are all around. And so you're making a habit of listening, looking for the positive, looking for what is good to actually enjoy in another's tea, no matter what it is. The hospitality, the kindness, you're always looking for something to compliment. You're actively hunting for something to enjoy, right? And this is the spirit of tea. This is the 1 to 10, 10 to 1, right? Which I'll come back to, because I'm going to tell you my favorite tea story at the end of this list. But I want to finish the list. There's 2 more. The next one is to amplify the host's energy. Don't run counter to your host's energy, but rather be like tea. If it's in a teapot, it takes the shape of the pot. If it's in the bowl, it takes the shape of the bowl. If your host wants to chat, then make this a chatty session and wonderful. It's their session. If they want to be silent, then you be silent. If I go to my buddy's place in Taipei, who's like more of a tea merchant, and he wants to talk about the prices of pu'er and the market and things like this, then we chat about the pu'er market. It's his place. I'm not trying to be like, you, be quiet in your own home. We should be drinking this tea in complete silence. It's not, and this goes the same from the host perspective. If you turn to one of your guests and go, shh, you're far more disruptive than whatever they were doing. Obviously, it's far more aggressive than whatever they're doing. So, amplify whatever energy they're trying to create. What's the vibe of that session, and how can I help make it that vibe? And this also means don't steal their thunder. This is a really important one. Don't steal their thunder. This takes a lot of forms. One form is we never bring tea to someone else's tea session. Don't bring tea. It's here in Taiwan, it can be semi-rude. That person may have spent hours, maybe. They might have spent hours, they may have spent minutes, they may have invested a lot of energy in choosing the tea for that session. And you show up with a tea and they're like, here, brew this. Here in China, it can be a little bit rude because it's like, there's a kind of way of saying like, hey, try this tea might be better than the version you have or something. And who knows how the tea matches what they've set out. Sometimes if that's the purpose of the session, then of course you do it. If I call my buddy Janos and say, hey, bring over that pu'er, I want to taste it, and next to mine, and then of course, yeah, that's obvious. But like bringing tea is stealing thunder, and stealing thunder could also be in the conversation. So after the session is over and a conversation begins, right? Let the host guide it. Even if they say something that actually is inaccurate about tea. Don't embarrass them in front of their guests and be like, actually, this is now you get the opportunity. They're saying something harmless. If there's an opportunity later in another setting, you could correct them, but don't embarrass them. Let them, it's not important. You don't need to defend it, and you can practice tolerance and patience and kindness and focus away from it and listen, because if you develop that attitude of like being critical, you're not receptive. In some ways, we're taught that in our education because critical thinking is such an important part of rigorous scientific method. And critical thinking is an incredibly important part of living a healthy human life. It's not to be thrown out. But we can be unskillful with it. It's a weapon that can be yielded where you can like go into a classroom literally and just be like, that's really defensive posture, and like if you're gonna get me to agree with anything, you're gonna have to pierce lots of armor, right? Whereas, and what that really comes from, actually, when you think about it, what it really comes from is a lack of self-esteem. It's a lack of internal uprightness. It's a lack of internal dignity, and it's also means that the navigation system, the compass of that individual doesn't have enough shun, enough spirit. Because when I'm centered in myself and my navigation system, I don't fear any view. You can't knock me off course. When I come to the class, I will absorb as much as I possibly can with as wide of an aperture as I possibly can to take in as much as I possibly can. Later on, my system will sort it out. Just like my digestive system can sort out what nutrients are for me, I can sort out what nutrients are for me also, right? So there's a good practice in listening also. Just don't steal the host's thunder. If they're wrong, they're wrong. Let them be. Don't embarrass them. Don't, take over the conversation. Let them guide it. If anything, you just contribute a little bit, but don't steal their thunder. And then the final thing for being a host is just as I said, as being a guest, just with the host, the host after the ceremony, we take some time to kind of sit and rest in the space and be intimate with it. After the ceremony's over, our guests have left, we take a moment before we clean up and we sit and think of our guests fondly and help wish them a good day, be grateful for the occasion that we just had, the wonderful, beautiful occasion, and rest in that, and then clean up. In the same way as a guest, you can also, throughout your day, as you leave from that ceremony, make an effort to think back fondly and feel a little grateful for being invited into that person's home or their space, and for all that they did to make your day better and create ceremonial sacred space in your life, and be grateful for the occasion, grateful for the tea, grateful for what they did, and practice that, more of that. So these are the ways, some of the etiquette for being guest. There may be other little details, but those are the main ones. And again, understanding that is not judgment in either direction, right? There's no judgment in either direction. We're all beginners. We're all open and listening, receptive, right? Trusting in our own digestive system, right? But also careful of the nutrients we take in. And to wrap that up, I think that it's helpful if I maybe tell my favorite tea story. It captures a lot of the themes of this course. It captures a lot of the themes that we've spoken about today. It captures a lot of the dynamic of being a host and a guest, and a lot of what we've spoken about today. And I actually have two versions of the story. I have the traditional one, and I have the one from my own life. And I like to tell them both, and that'll kind of wrap up this course and the main themes of this course. So this story is about Senno Rikyo. We've mentioned him, one of the constellations in the sky of tea lovers that we all must look up to and admire. And we can call him master because he's passed away, no longer a student. And Senno Rikyo became tea teacher to the shogun. And so he was very much an important person and a lord. And in those days, society was a lot more stratified maybe than today. And so he lived in a big household compound that included the school and his living quarters and lots of servants. And, in those days, somebody at that level of society, everything they needed would have been delivered to their home. And it would have been delivered through a back entrance, and it would have been servants who would have taken care of all that. And for some reason, we don't know why, Rikyo became enamored with the fisherman who delivered fish to the house every day. And you can imagine how nervous that made that fisherman. And as I told you, in those days, it was legal for a samurai to kill a peasant for any reason. You don't even make eye contact. That's there. If you read old novels in Europe, it wasn't legal, but it's not like a noble would have been in trouble for doing those things. Or, if you read novels, you often have characters like the servants you can tell they're like, I don't know how to talk to you. In other words, like I don't have your etiquette of speech, so I don't know how to speak. They're uncomfortable talking to their masters, like especially in an informal way. And so you can imagine that fisherman looking down at his feet a lot and being really nervous in the beginning. But over time, Rikyo disarmed him, and they became great buddies because of the sincerity of his heart. Rikyo disarmed him, and they would sit in the kitchen and drink boiled tea. Sencha, actually originally, sencha means simmered tea. It was originally boiled. The other day we talked about side handles, and I said that the original side handles in Japan were like ours. They were heralds hearkening back to the days when side handle pots were used to boil herbs, and they used them to simmer tea. But then as sencha became more and more of a tea that was steeped, the kyusu changed shape away from that design. So they would simmer tea maybe, and or whatever, and sit in the kitchen, drink and chat. And after some time, some years of this, they became great friends. And Rikyo started to notice that the fisherman had something on his mind. He wanted to ask something. You can tell. But they're Japanese and very formal, so they, especially in those days, they had to kind of dance around the issue and wait for the perfect opportunity. Finally, Rikyo cornered the fisherman. He assumed that the brother needed help, maybe money, something like that. And so, he, in a way, fished. He's like, yeah, is there something you want to ask me? Is there something on your mind? I'd be happy to help you. So he made it easier. He opened the door for the fisherman. And the fisherman said, well, there is something I've been meaning to ask you for quite some time. And it's just, I just know you'd say no, so I've never asked. That's why. But you see, it's my wife. She just keeps nagging me about it. And every day I come here, she nags me to ask you. And, well, but I know you'll say no, so I just, well, it's just that I was wondering if you would come to our home for tea. And completely blown away, so unexpected. A smile slowly spread on Rikyo's face. And yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And so a day was set. And on that day, Rikyo brought one of his most senior students. This was actually the greatest gift that he could give the fisherman. Rikyo's students were lords and the sons of lords. By bringing his student, Rikyo I'm sure Rikyo also brought little gifts. But by bringing his student, what he was saying is kind of like, I'm not ashamed of our relationship. It's not a secret thing I do in the kitchen. Right? I'm open to others of my station knowing that you're my friend. It's a powerful gesture what he did. So he brought his student, and they went to the fisherman's little hut, and they were served some tea and a simple meal. And they left a couple hours later. And after the gate was closed and they got out into the road, and the fisherman had gone. They'd gone around a corner, and the fisherman's gone back in his house. Rikyo stopped right there in the middle of the road, and he put his hand on his heart, and he sighed. He said, "That was one of the most transcendental tea sessions of my entire life." And he started walking home with a fresh gait. If you've been to a really nice tea ceremony, you know that fresh gait that I'm talking about. A new little bounce in your step. A little glimmer in everything in the world. The flowers smell better. Again, nature's always talking. Tea helps us understand what she's saying. After they got about halfway home, the student couldn't take it anymore. Stopped his teacher right in the middle of the road. "Master, I don't understand. How could that be one of the most transcendental tea sessions of your entire life? How is that possible? That man did everything wrong. Everything you've ever taught us. The starting with the tea that he selected wasn't good, wasn't from this place, wasn't of this quality. And the ceremony itself, he bungled so much. He had the wrong teaware out. It was clashing. The chashi wasn't nice. He dropped this, he dropped that. He whisked the tea poorly. It tasted gritty. The meal afterwards was blah, blah, blah. Like everything was inappropriate. How could that be one of the most transcendental tea sessions of your entire life? I don't understand." And Rikyo looked his student deeply in the eyes. And he said, "That man did not invite us to his home to demonstrate his tea brewing skills." Now the story ends there. But if you push it forward just one day, you'll understand a lot about everything we've been talking about in this course and a lot about Zen. Because you better believe the very next day, Rikyo is going to be shouting at his students for not doing it right. There's a lot in this story, far more than we can unpack. It's kind of the whole of this course has been an unpacking of that story. There's one little small lesson. That's another lesson maybe about being a guest or a host, which is that a person of tea, a Chajin, never turns down an invitation to tea. Never turn down an invitation to tea. On a practical level, if you can't come to a tea session, if Janos calls and says, "Woo, can you come over for tea on Tuesday?" and I can't because my friend's getting married, then postpone. You then haven't turned down the invitation. Don't let Janus off the phone until you've set a new date. Don't postpone it like rain check some random time. No. Janus says, "Can you come for tea on Tuesday?" "I can't. I've got a wedding." "I can't, brother. I got a wedding. How about Thursday?" And he's like, "I can't Thursday." "Well, how about Saturday?" "Okay, Saturday's great, 2 p.m. And then I haven't turned down an invitation to tea, even from an enemy. I can't think of anyone I'd rather have tea with than an enemy. At least I'll get to know my enemy. At best, we'll make peace. So we don't turn down invitations to tea. That's a part of it. But in this story, you see, you have one of the nation's most important tea people. He's traveled very far. He's been teaching for decades. But he hasn't lost the spirit of tea. He's able to go to a fisherman's hut and to receive at the frequency that the fisherman is transmitting. The fisherman didn't invite them over to demonstrate his tea brewing skills. He invited them over to share hospitality and heart. And if you're caught up in skill, you're missing all that. You're stuck. No matter how far you travel, you can't lose touch with that beginning. And that can happen as skill grows. That's the problem with the I know mind. That's the problem with talking instead of listening. You see, it's like musicians sometimes when they make it big, their music starts to go downhill because they forget why they started making music. They forget that the increase in fame and the increase in money, all that money should mean better equipment to make better albums. And all that fame should mean more people to hear the albums, but they have to stay connected to why they love music in the first place. Rikyo hasn't lost his tea spirit, even though he's gone far. He's traveled far. This is important. He's able to then show up and sit and drink tea with an ordinary person, and there's no, like, I'm a tea person, and I know tea, and I'm, I've taken the Buddha course and have the certificate to prove it, and nonsense, right? That, you see, you've forgotten the face of the Buddha. That just shows a lack of understanding of tea, of Cha Dao. Sometimes people come to our center, they take a course or two, and then they go home, and we find later on some website, they're like, Susie studied deeply with Grand Master Buddha. No, she didn't. Or she wouldn't say she studied deeply, and she certainly wouldn't be calling me Grand Master. Nobody that knows me and studied deeply with me calls me that. I bungle way too much for that. I'm master at nothing. So, that there's nowhere to get. It's always to the beginning, right? Always back to the beginning. Always back to the roots. This is the quintessence of tea and of being a host and of being a guest. Both come from this spirit, right? The version of this story from my own personal life. Well, one time, I was in LA, and one of my dear friends, she had just gone through a breakup, and we were having a little walk on the beach, and I just listening to her and being there. And she then said, well, one of my friends has just moved here from New York, and this is where she just moved like 2 days ago, and then we're passing her apartment. She's like, let's go up and visit her. We'll be her first guest. And I was like, okay. And we went up and knocked on the door. This woman answered the door, and she boxes everywhere. She'd just gotten here, and she knew that my good friend liked tea, and she said, would you guys like some tea? And we said, yeah, of course. And she pulled out this pot that was made by her mom. Her mom was a potter in whatever, I don't know, New York somewhere or something, and just a more Western style pot, and three little cups with mugs. And she put some supermarket chamomile. It wasn't even Camellia sinensis. It was what we call tisane. We use the French word, which is another plant in hot water. Tea people, we try to not call that tea. I mentioned that yesterday. And we call that tisane. It was a tisane. It was chamomile or something. I don't remember. And she steeped up those tea bags and poured into those mugs. And she did so with such great hospitality and kindness. And she also herself was coming from a real peaceful place, and a place of, she had a meditation and yoga practice. And there was so much peace in the tea that we all just drifted into silence and drank a few cups of tea in complete silence without any formality or anything. It just happened. And for me, it was just so refreshing, because there I was I was literally there on a teaching tour. So I was there doing all these, this was my day off, and I was doing all these courses where, in myself, I know me. And that's why, when people come up and say Buddha's, you're so great or something, it's very easy for me to say, no, what you're seeing is Zen and tea, because I live in this house, and I know it ain't got clean plumbing. You can't peek in the window of my house and say, it looks really great in there, Wu. I live in this house, and all of it's mess. And, so I can take down the whatever projections in myself, but I can't take them down in other people's. And as I, become known in teaching tea, people are showing up with stuff, and they're projecting things onto me, and good or bad, their stories. My teacher's teacher got kind of famous, and my teacher used to always say that the sad byproduct of that was that a lot of people would come to learn about him unconsciously instead of to learn about Dharma, right? They would, for good or ill, they would focus on the messenger instead of the message, right? They would use the things they don't like about him and his story to dismiss the Dharma, or they would latch onto the things they like instead of focusing on the Dharma. And I understand that problem. It's a real issue, and it needs to have more attention drawn to it, right? Because That's why I told you people want to interview me. They always want to start with my story, and it's not important. If it's the wrong point, because if you could use it as an excuse to not accept teachings that are good for you, the ego likes to do that. Something that's actually really good for it, but it doesn't want to accept it because of who said it, right? That's one of its tactics to avoid the bitter medicine. So, the point being that I was used to walking into tea spaces where people know me and all the stuff I don't like about that. And this was so refreshing because this was just people drinking tea. She didn't know anything. She just was serving me some tea, and I wasn't anybody. And I like that. If it was my choice, I would live that lifestyle. Out of service, I want to share these teachings and these techniques with others, but I personally would rather live in anonymity if it was my personal choice. And so that anonymity in that session was really back to tea, back to what it really is about, and minus hoopla. And it's not always hoopla for me either. So it's not like that problem consumes everything. It's just it's there. It's a thing that needs to be dealt with. Whereas in this case, it wasn't. And I was blown away. It changed my whole day. I was just like, woohoo, like this, that glimmer, that same strut. I understood Rikyo's story, like fully and in an embodied way, in a way I'd never had before. I was so ecstatic. And 3 days later, we had this big kind of party. And at that party, sure enough, comes that girl coming up to me. And we had this big fundraiser. It was like 200 people. And she comes up to me and she's literally crying. The lady from the apartment. And she's like, oh, I didn't know you were her teacher. You were her tea teacher. And I served you the chamomile tea from a tea bag. And she started going off like this. And I stopped her. I said, oh, no. Listen, it took me like 5 minutes to convince her because she thought I was just trying to calm her down or being like polite or political. But I was actually 100% sincere. I was telling her, look, you don't understand. I'm going to be talking about this tea ceremony for the rest of my life. Which is obviously proofs in the pudding. Yeah, I am. It's one of the highlights of my life. She's just so non-pretentious, so hospitable, so kind, from such a place of stillness. Without any techniques, she knew how to bow. Basically. She knew how to bow, and she knew how to take that energy of a bow and infuse it in tea and hand it to me. And that's primary before method. Now, that person has become a tea person. So now she's added method to that. And now she started from the right place, right? She started with a bow, and now you add method to that. You got to start with the bow. If you start with method without the bow, it can take a long time to find the bow. Right? It can take a long time to find the bow in the form if you don't start with the bow. You start with the bow, then the form will empower. Right? If you start with a love of music, then you learn the skills, and you'll be able to take that soul and use those skills and shred it. If you get lost in the skills and never had the love and the soul at the beginning, right, it'll be a lot harder to find your way back to the soul, if you understand my point. So this just goes to show all the talent in the world is nothing without the spirit and without the soul. And if you got to go without one or the other, certainly choose the right spirit and forget about all the things. Tea is so wonderful, and tea is the second most consumed substance on this earth. It is joined. Yesterday we talked about the commoditization. That's not all bad. Tea has become us, and it has taken on our karmas, and it's become fully the human experience. It has literally defined the geopolitics of this world. The British Empire was built on it. America started by throwing it in the ocean. So much of our world, our economy is based on its history. There's an old Chinese saying that tea doesn't belong to China, China belongs to tea, because it also was a big part of the commerce. And do you know that the spring officially began when the emperor sipped the first sip of the first green tea. Tea really dictated the calendar. It's been such an essential part of all that's human. And the commoditization has its negative sides, certainly. We talked about some of them yesterday. But there's also a beauty in that. There's a beauty in the fact that tea spans the whole human spectrum. that it spans everything from old ladies and samovars to construction workers taking a break from their work. Everything from hobbyists and all kinds of fun, geekery and enjoyment and learning about teapots and fun, geeky things, all the way to monks meditating in the highest of spiritual states. It is a bridge from the sacred to the mundane and from the mundane to the sacred. You can travel tea from the ordinary to the sacred, and you can use it to bring the sacred into the ordinary, to bring more of the meditative mind into your daily life. It flows both ways. It's open to all people. It's accessible to all. It is the world over. It is kindness and hospitality. That's the reason it's the second most consumed substance. Not because of high connection to nature and meditation and ceremony. A lot of that's been lost. And it's just held up by lineages that are left and dwindling like ours. The ceremonial approaches to tea, or traditional ceremonial approaches to tea, aren't left very much. Some in Japan, a little in Korea, and lineages like ours, but dwindling. Mostly weirdos like us, mostly weirdos. But aside from weirdos, the tea is about hospitality. I've gone out and give teachings, and the group of old Russian ladies will say, Mr. Wu, a lot of these things you say, they go over our head. But this thing you say about tea being kindness and love, we understand. And at our house is always samovar, and you are always welcome, Mr. Wu, come over for tea. And I've received all of that kind of energy around the world. Everybody gets that part, gets the part of how we connect to each other through tea, how it's non-sectarian, it flows, you don't have to believe in anything, you don't have to be anything. She meets you where you are. Old lady, construction worker, monk living in the mountains. She meets you where you are. She comes to wherever you are and brings the wisdom of nature and reminders of who you really are. And if you show up and listen and to her, she will uplift you individually and uplift all of us as well. And this is really the magic of tea, the magic of this beautiful, beautiful practice that has changed my life. May it change your life. May you absorb lots of tea and do lots of listening to your own body, to tea, to all of her wisdom, which is far more important than mine. In fact, all of the wisdom of this whole course is just a dumbed down, terrible attempt to translate the things that she speaks much betterly. Much better, I said betterly, it's a new word. So all the things that she teaches so much betterly, and all of the stuff that really comes through her from nature, all that wisdom, may that empower you and uplift you in your life. And also these traditional ceremonies that I've given you are so powerful, and there's so much in them, they're so rich. After decades of practicing those forms, I'm still discovering all kinds of new twinkles and glimmers and miracles in those forms. So those forms are also so impactful and worth listening to, and worth really infusing into your life. May all of that infuse, may it fill you, may it enrich your life, and then through you, may it enrich the lives of those you care about. And like that, really, we can change the world. Love can do so, bowl by bowl. And I would like to conclude this whole course with my absolute favorite tea quote. As I've said over and over again, all of the teachings in this course are invitations to explore, invitations to come and see. More than any other word, the Buddha said, ehipassiko, come and see. Come and see what happens when you see the world like this. Come and see what happens when you practice. Come and see what happens when you drink tea. So it's all an invitation. And so I'd like to end with an invitation. My favorite tea quote of all time is an invitation. And it actually comes from Winnie the Pooh. And Piglet says to Christopher Robin, come inside and let's see if a pot of tea can make the world a better place.